Hello, Monique. Welcome to the Conscious
Thank
Leaders conversation.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive in today with you. Just for those of you who don't know who Monique is, which I'm surprised if you don't, but Monique Alvarez is a force, and she's a founder of Alma Publishing and Network Like the Rich. She's an international best-selling author and private chef to her kids and husband of 18 years. So when she's not ruling the world, you can find Monique making chocolate souffle for breakfast. So I thought
Live
I'd,
life slice.
yeah, I thought I'd open up with asking you about this chocolate souffle for breakfast. So what does that say about you and how you choose to live
Yes.
your life?
Yeah, it says a lot about me. And you will know if we go out to eat together, I order dessert first. And it doesn't matter if we're going for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So we have this tradition, of course, now I've trained my kids on this. So they just think everyone eats dessert first, right?
Mhm.
And then I guess it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I decided to learn how to make chocolate souffle because when we lived in Albania, every single restaurant, it was like one Albanian went somewhere and learned how to make chocolate souffle, and now every single restaurant had it on the menu. So we had chocolate souffle every day for months on end. And so we were missing it. And so now, chocolate souffle is just part of the mix.
Brings you back to Albania.
Brings me back to Albania. Exactly.
That's a story in its of itself. Do you want to share anything about what being in Albania taught you that you now actually consider it part of your, what's important to you today?
Yeah, Albania is definitely part of my DNA. And actually, I was recently thinking about this because when I went to Albania, I left, I was a small town girl and I left home and everyone I knew, and I was 6,000 miles away from it all. And at that time, there was not communication. So I might be able to send an email once every 2 weeks. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Phone calls weren't really a thing. It would be every now and again, it might happen. And so I was completely shut off from the rest of the world. And I look back and I realize how important that was because I was not influenced by anyone or anything else. And it helped me find my own rhythm and it helped me find my own way. And I learned how to solve problems and I learned to take an afternoon nap if I wanted or have dessert for breakfast if I wanted. And I began to find my own sense of self outside of the family structure, outside of religion, outside of sort of supposed to do's. And I have always looked back at my time in Albania. I was there, in my 20s, and it has always been a bright spot. Like those were the best years of my life. Now, keep in mind, Albania was not in a good place. There was so little. I would go to the grocery store, there might be 5 items, 10 items. They were all expired. It was not a time of like luxury, and I lived on $300 a month, but it was a lot of peace and a sense of self. And I am feeling that again. I feel like this season that I'm in most and best correlates to that season in Albania. And that makes me feel good because I'm able to create this outside of Albania. And as you know, I went back so many times. I took my husband, took my kids, I took everybody and I have went over and over again. And I think that was part of what I was trying to do was to get it so deep in my cells that I could have it no matter where I was.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. And you're teaching people to network like the rich. So that's an interesting segue to how you're doing that now. I'm curious, what did growing up teach you about money, success, and power, access, and that you
Mhm.
maybe had to unlearn so that you could teach what you're teaching now?
It's interesting because growing up, I never well, however you grow up, you just think that's how it is.
Yeah.
You just think that's how it is for everybody. So growing up, I didn't know how much my family had. It
Mm.
wasn't until I started getting this outside feedback, and I remember this happened for the first time in the fifth grade. We were passing out Valentines, and a girl made a point to tell me, "You don't get one from me because your family's rich enough to buy you one." And I didn't even know what that meant, but it rocked me and it made me feel different. And it pointed me out in a way that I didn't want to be pointed out. And I remember I went home and I was just like, what does that mean? Is she telling the truth? And at that time, my parents were building this beautiful home. They were both doing well in their businesses. We had fancy cars, we had nice clothes, we went on vacations, but I didn't know that that wasn't everyone's experience. And so I have this contrast in my life. I grew up with money. Everyone in my family is they're all overachievers. They've all went above and beyond. Everyone owns houses and cars and land and gold and guns and everything that feels like success in Colorado, right?
Mhm.
And then I had this contrast of living in the poorest countries of the world and being able to see what's universal and what does come with money and what doors does money open, and how do relationships and proximity play into that, and people who have that, how their thinking is different than those who don't. So it's a full circle thing, and realizing that money and success is largely, I would say, if it came down to one thing, it's an obsession and a commitment to something that someone cares about deeply.
Hmm.
And that's really what it's about.
So what's the most expensive mistake that you've ever made in business that's not financial, that's not
Not
money
financial.
related, but has actually cost you emotionally and physically?
Hmm.
Maybe you might even pay that price again.
Yes. So, yeah, every business owner definitely makes costly financial decisions, and I love this question because there are costly decisions that don't include money. And this has been something that's been on my mind for the last year, because one of the best and worst decisions I made was when we decided to come online. So I had two babies in 12 months. We wanted to travel with the boys, so we moved to Mexico. So I had to shift from a Main Street business and the Thursday morning BNI and chamber. I had to come into this big world of the internet. Now, I had had a Facebook account, but I was the type of person that posted, once a week. Like, it wasn't a thing,
Mhm.
especially back then, it wasn't a big thing. And so when we were sitting in Mexico, I had to figure out, how do I translate what I used to be able to do face to face through this screen? And I remember I was sitting in my office and I got this idea. Facebook had just rolled out Facebook Lives, and I just knew I was supposed to go live every single day. I didn't have a plan. I was not big on strategy at that time. I was just follow the breadcrumbs, listen to the guidance, and see how it unfolds. So what I didn't know at that time, and I couldn't have expected, is how much going live every day and posting every day would grow an audience, and how many followers and how much attention that would draw. Now, the real peak and pinnacle was when I was pregnant with my third baby, and everyone had watched the whole pregnancy publicly. And then I had a full-term stillbirth. And at that point, I made the decision, am I going to continue this, or am I going to stop and pull back and disappear? And I decided to continue. Of course, we all know that there's the dark side to that, that there's internet trolls, there's critics, there's people who know you who will cut you down, there's people who don't know you at all and they'll have an opinion on your life. The biggest mistake I made, Sarah, is that when I got my first troll and I got my first hater, I approached them like the good small town girl that I had been raised to be. I was like, you know what? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to kill them with kindness. I'm going to let that go. And that was the most costly mistake emotionally and mentally that I ever made.
Mhm.
Because what I learned on the internet is, when people, they're reading your behavior all the time, they're watching your patterns. And when they see that when they saw that I had that approach, they were like, oh, you know what? We can grab this one by the hair and drag her through this. And
Mm.
it wasn't until I was so deep into it, this is hate groups dedicated to me. This is, getting threats of all kinds, going to come after your family. I'm going to, have all your clients sue you.
And this was from you sharing your story after the stillbirth? And just I want to make sure that that's what the
Yeah,
connection
it's
with this was from.
very fascinating, right? And I will say 100% of it came from women, other women. There were women who said I deserved it, that I must have done something bad in a past life. There were women who said I made the whole thing up for attention. There was women who said my husband was a figment of my imagination. Anything you can imagine, it was said and done. And I wasn't in the space to be a badass and to be a hard ass and just be like, you know what? And and go on this blocking spree and just like heads roll, right? That's the approach that's actually necessary for me, I have found. I had always done that I'm going to ignore it and let it ride.
Yeah.
And everybody has to find their method, but what I figured out is I won't ever ignore it again. I won't ever let someone say something and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some consequence to that. And I can do that now. And, I recently said, coming back into my business, I stepped out for a little bit, coming back on social media and being very visible. I'm aware this is the game. It's a double-edged sword, right? There's pros and cons. I've got thousands of clients all over the world. And when you're that far out there, this is going to happen. And that's what I had to come to terms with is I understand what that horse kicks like. I got that in the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And am I prepared? And what am I going to do when and if that happens again? And I had to get okay with that. I came back on a year ago, but I've held back most of that time.
Mm.
I would say I'm just starting to come out to that full, because when I speak and I write, I'm pretty full tilt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm incredibly polarizing. And I had been dancing this nice, kind of back back here in the back row line. But also I know I can't do that. That doesn't serve me. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I,
That sounds like a huge shift and lesson into what doesn't bring you down fully makes you stronger. It's like you've now got this whole new level of what you could say play the game, right? And as you know, I really want to bring online the conversation about women in business going through perimenopause and how that changes the game as well. Like that is can be seen as a kick in the teeth or throws you off guard. And I see, a lot of women, they might see this as like the ending or something is going against them or it's like an attack, right? Like it can be really, really difficult. I want to know, how are you choosing to see it differently,
Mhm.
if so, and maybe what's opening up for you now that you are going through this shift?
I think initially it's natural for women to feel like this is a setback. This is a punishment. I mean, I remember having these thoughts of like, okay, you have these reproductive years, like you can have children, you can have babies. So your body's designed to have babies and you have all of the things that you deal with that, right? And and then, obviously motherhood is an initiation in and of itself. And I was initially of this idea, like, haven't we had enough initiations? I think, women have done plenty up until this point. Why can't we just then go into the wisdom years? And now, being almost 3 years into this journey, because I would say at 45, it was just like boom. I could feel it. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what to do, but there was actually a moment when I was like, everything's different.
Was this right before you closed down your business? Yeah. Okay.
It is right, right.
Or close it
Right
down,
before I
but you
stepped
stepped
out.
away. Yeah.
Yep. And so initially it was like, this really stinks. And I think we're being asked to do one too many things.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I see is this is actually how the wisdom comes. Wisdom is not something that's handed. It's earned. And in our society, we don't really like this idea of needing to earn something. We don't want to earn trust. We don't want to earn a reputation. We don't want to earn a win. We think, and it's becoming more prevalent that, this stuff is just passed out. Like everybody just gets one.
Mm-hmm.
And I have such a respect and a reverence for this time of life now because I see that when you are confronted with your own mortality, when you're confronted with how you operate on a day-to-day basis, when you feel the gap and see the gap between who you used to be and who you are now, and then who will I become, you have to go into the deep waters. You have to look at everything that you once thought was important and do I still, and every relationship, and will it ride? Will it make it through this?
Yeah.
What's priority, right? So
Hmm.
now it's like, it's kind of like I've talked about many of the things that I've went through, like a full term stillbirth. I don't wish that on anyone, but I'm going to tell you, I could have never gained what I gained had I not went through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you
So
see
now,
the same
yeah,
with the symptoms. And do you feel like I know everybody navigates it differently. We all have different symptoms. It shows up very differently. You said that it just hit you and you knew. I'm curious, what was it that, how'd you know? Was it just the way you
my
felt
mind.
changed?
I,
Your mind
I would say
changed?
my mind.
Mhm.
I'm a person who I think, I strategize, I plan. I mean, in the business, it was like I always had a plan and I had another plan and I had a launch plan and I got a this plan. And so I first noticed it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
My mind was not clicking and thinking the way it had.
Yeah.
And at first it was like it was so bizarre because I thought at first, like, am I tired? Did I was trying to figure out, like, what did I do? Like, I was like a detective.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh. And then there was, I think because of that, then I started feeling anxiety. I'd never felt anxiety in my whole life. I had heard people talk about it. I had never experienced it myself. I'm not a person who'd ever suffered with depression or anxiety or, social anxiety, any of this, right? I thought I was having a heart attack. And then I realized, oh, this is anxiety. And I think I was having anxiety because I knew I'm not thinking the same way. And none of my dots are lining up. And I'm the face of this business. I'm the one who figures a lot of where we're going out. Like I'm leading the charge. And
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I shouldn't be in charge because nothing is clicking the way that it used to. That was what I noticed first.
Yeah. I can completely relate to that. That like describes exactly how I felt as well. So I'm curious, how did you adapt to that? What was the way that I mean, obviously you take more downtime, you take lots of naps, you're taking care of yourself. I know are conscious about your body and how to take care of it. So I'd love to just share, like, what does Monique do to get her
To
mind
tell,
back and to navigate, yeah, in this space, in this,
you know, it's a great question because I think what most of us are faced with is like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It's almost this panic, like, what are we going to do to fix this
yeah.
so that this doesn't happen anymore? So I don't experience this anymore. And I think that what I knew, my gut told me from day one, don't try to fix this. Adapt to this. Take the gifts of this. Now, for me, and for those who know me, like I've been up until this point like a very driven, ambitious, goal-oriented, fast-moving, everything I want, I get. And that was not compatible with adapt and be with it. So a
Mm-hmm.
few things that I did, a few things I didn't do. I was not going to take anything. So I understand that I'm probably on the extreme side of taking care of yourself. I've never taken birth control in my life, so I never disrupted my own cycles. I never went against my body.
Mm-hmm.
I conceived naturally. I had natural labor. I had lavender oil and deep breaths, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never been on a prescription drug in my life. Never been to a doctor. Never taken over the counter medication. Always eaten clean and according to my blood type. Long walks, yoga. Like you name it, I've done it, right? I've always went to bed early. I've never, like, I've just always synced up with the sun. Like I've done all these things.
Yeah.
And so what I knew in my gut is if I try to find something to fix this, to make this go away, it's
Yeah.
going to be the first time in my life that I decided to do that. And I was not okay with that. So I did the things like you said. I stepped out of my business. I knew, I mean, I remember looking at Derek and I said, I can't, I can't be in charge anymore and I can't be the face of the business and I'm not the solution right now. And he was like, what are you talking about, crazy pants? Like, because he didn't yet know what was going on, right?
Hmm.
I didn't even know how to describe it yet, much less tell somebody else, right? And but I was clear on that. And I mean, it was done. It wasn't up for discussion because I just knew I couldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
So I went into the first time in my life since Albania, right? Where I got up when I wanted to get up. I would go for a little walk. I'd go sit in the field. I'd eat whatever I was feeling like. I did not restrict my diet. I didn't go on some crazy thing and follow somebody's trendy thing. I just literally had to slow down and turn up my ears and listen for what does your body want now, today, in this moment. I started sleeping an insane amount, Sarah. Like most people would be shocked at how much I slept. I mean, I'd take a 3 hour nap in the day and then I'd sleep, 8, 10, 12 hours at night. And what I really did is I learned how to go in.
Yeah.
Now, I'm an extrovert. I'm a person who's stimulated and inspired by my environment. You look at all my human design, all that. And I have never been an internal person.
Hmm.
And I learned how to go inside and go in this world and just be there. It was like I was in my own womb. And that was how I decided to deal with these things because I realized I don't want to force, I want to adapt.
I can't tell you how much I love hearing this way of being that you naturally navigated into with this perimenopause phase. You could call it this fluctuation of your brain, your hormones. Like that's what I would wish every woman to have that space to just drop in and listen to the body. And I think for some, it may not be as natural. And it sounds like even for you, it wasn't even that natural, but it was still was something you knew that you were going to do this in alignment with your values, which is to keep it, without interrupting your natural cycle. And I think it's so important to point out that, we all have our different ways of tuning into what our body needs. And there's no shame about how you go about needing to get through or find your way through this period because it's highly personal, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's such a wonderful example to know that there are women who can navigate this with taking some space, listening to your body, and realizing this is a whole new game. This is a whole new way of playing life that you're
Oh,
here
yeah.
for. You're present for. You get to really, I want to say, like, co-create with your new brain and body because that's what this is. You have a whole new experience of yourself.
Absolutely. It is a whole new experience of yourself. And I think it's important to state this, okay? When I chose to do this and when other women are finding their own way,
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to be said that the people around us are going to be thrown off at first because the person we've been is the only person they've known. And so when we are literally becoming a different person from, I mean, they can show you how gray matter changes during this period of life.
Mm-hmm.
Hormones obviously, everything changes. But for, spouses and children, and friends and parents or clients or whatever, it it's going to throw them off for a little bit because they don't know who you are, just like we don't even know who we are. They don't know who we are either. And it required so many conversations of like, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And I remember feeling this deep, deep conviction. And I will say that this time of life also helps us really plant our feet and sink our teeth into it. I was not willing to keep up any sort of song and dance from the past, no matter what it cost me. We made less money. tell let me tell you the cold hard facts. We made less money because when I'm not doing the song and dance, we make less money, right? But it was not worth any amount of money for me to try to force and push through and pretend like nothing was happening and try to make my body do what it had done before. And so I was deeply committed to having as many conversations, and there was no, I was not budging. Like I'm typically a very flexible person. That's why living overseas worked for me. I adapt, I flow, I bend. I got so rigid and so stubborn because I was not going, like I was going to die on this hill. And that I think is what helped me navigate it and also helped the people in my life who I care about to see like, oh wow, this is definitely not her. And so it must be important. It must need to be this way.
Yeah, there's a burning up of the past for sure. I think that the physical sensations of heat that take over the body is there is a burning up. It's like when you're cleansing and detoxing your body, there's this it's uncomfortable. And it's also, if you can embrace and ride the waves, I think there's a connection also with, having also gone through child labor, birth, that there's a way you can relate to the sensations of it that is more allowing and more riding the wave versus resisting it, right? And
Yes.
letting it break you or seem like something that's somehow bad, even though this is how nature set us up to experience life at some level.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, so you've been married for 18 years, and
Hmm.
I believe Derek is part of the business, right? Or has
Yes.
helped you on the back end in some way, or yeah. So what's that like? And what has that been like? How would maybe he describe working with Monique in this phase of life?
Yeah, so Derek and I, we have been in business together for 16 years. So that was sort of my aha moment when we got married. I didn't want him to get a job. I didn't want to get a job. I wanted us to work together and I wanted us to be at home and I wanted us to travel and I wanted us when we had babies that we could raise them together. So we have spent a lot of hours together. Maybe on the high end for married couples, we spend all day every day together.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very in sync most of the time. Yeah, there's times, I'll drive him nuts, he'll drive me nuts, absolutely, or we'll have a misunderstanding or whatever. But for the most part, we really sync up. And what I would say, he would say, actually, this is how I described it, and he agreed because I think he's really getting his bearings on who is this wife now. And honestly, Derek has always been the easygoing one, right? I'm the one who's been this line drive. And so I think I'm more like him now, which, is like, okay, this is nice, but it's also weird. Like who's this person? Um, but we were talking about an offer and the next thing in our business recently, and he was like, so what's the plan and what's the income goal and how are we getting there? And I go, oh, I don't do that anymore. He was like, okay, so like how do we plan, how do we move forward? I don't know, we don't. And it was just like, okay, being in um that more unknown place. And he was like, okay, so because men are always thinking like, okay, so where are we landing, what's the solution, what's the plan? And so I said, the best thing I can tell you is that every minute of my day is designed to support me so that I can experience the most joy and the most being, I call it just being so absolutely on the bullseye with myself. Some would call this alignment, whatever you want to call it, right? So every minute of my day is the way it is so that I am spot on, I'm connected to myself, and I'm experiencing joy. And then that leads to sparks of inspiration, and then that leads to an idea, and then that leads to an action, and then that leads to something happening, right? And he was like, I get it. I think what you're saying is I do the heavy lifting of like building out the funnels or the website or the landing page or the 6 emails they get after they register or whatever, and you take good care of yourself, you experience joy, and when the sparks of inspiration hit, you do your thing, and then you tell me what I need to do to support that thing. And it's just like, yeah, that's it. That's it exactly.
That is a beautiful dance of the masculine and feminine roles right there. So take note here. This is really quite a gem to witness that, you know, this happens in relationships, that you can cultivate this by really standing in your truth, really honoring what is of your highest excitement, of what's your joy. I love that. What does that actually look like though for you? How do you practically follow your joy? How do you practically like say, I'm in alignment? What is,
Mm,
and I'm sure it's
yes.
unique to you, but what is that for you? What is that like?
So I can give you an example. So I was in this, what I call like the cocoon or the womb phase, for it felt like a long time, right? And it was in, I want to say May or June. And I was actually out in the field. There's this spot I love out in the field, and I have a chair, and I just sit out there, watch the clouds float by. I've really learned how to do nothing, which is yeah, especially when you are in an American society, like other cultures, they move a lot slower than us, but we're just always popping. And so I was just sitting in the field staring at the clouds, and I got this phrase came to me, network like the rich. I was I like that. So I sit a little longer, look at the clouds. I come inside, I get on my laptop and I Google, like, is networklikeTheRich.com available? It's available.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Interesting. So I write it down. I go back out to the field. I do a little walk. I do this, that, and the other. And I hear, create a 12-day challenge. So I come in, I write it down, and I just let it be. And then Derek and I have a conversation. He was like, if you didn't have to do anything going forward, if you weren't responsible for anything, if you didn't have to do anything, what's the one thing you would do, and you'd do it for free? And immediately I blurted out network. I would network for free. I'd events, I'd attend networking events, I'd throw parties, I'd do things online off. And he's like, okay, perfect. That I kind of thought that. And then he asked me, like, what are the things you wouldn't do if you never had to do them again? Like, you would never do them again, never for any amount of money. And that was fast and easy too. Private work. I'd never do private work again. I'd never consult again. And he was like, okay. So we're both kind of in our own process, and he's taking his own notes, and he's like, okay, I think the thing that we need to do is create some courses, and we can actually sell those through ads and funnels and all of this, but it's still your spark and it's still the thing you love. So there's energy and life and soul in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want, you could show up whenever you want, and you could twirl and you could host a thing, and then you're done, right?
Yeah.
And what I was playing with was my schedule. So I, at that time, decided to work every other week. Like nothing was even open every other week. And that was feeling so good because it was allowing me to find my way from the womb to like the world.
Yeah.
And so then the next day, I got the whole thing for the networking challenge, the 12-day networking challenge. So I felt the confirmation had showed up. I usually get confirmation 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this phrase that was in my mind. So I went online, I put a color block post, and I put the phrase out there. Something like, would you like to learn how to network like the rich? And people are like, do, do, do. So I told Derek they like it, they want it. What here's the content. Would do something with it, and he's like, okay, while I'm building it out, we could do this, get it. So we end up selling, I don't know, 56 to 58 spots into this program, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an example of what it looks like. Now, on any given day, am I pounding out? Am I working hours and hours? No. It's the idea, it's the confirmation, it's the, oh, there's the juice. I feel it. I feel like I can't keep this to myself anymore. So I go share it and let me see how they respond. And then they responded. So let's give it to them. And then Derek, you build it out. That's what it looks like.
This is so gold. And I can attest to the creational spark that is just divinely guided with Network Like the Rich, because I've been in your world for a while. I've definitely drawn to the work you do and what you put out. It's very quality, it's high integrity, and I get so much value, being in your world. And so when you came up with this new offer concept of Network Like the Rich, it was just like, that's what I've been asking for. Like, I needed someone to show me. So it's incredible when you get those divinely inspired ideas that you act on that. And I think what Monique is saying here is so important to just take notice of, is that it involves taking action. You can have all the great ideas, but they don't mean anything unless you get the confirmation, put it out there in the way that's you're designed to do, which you also follow your design, and that leads you to the success. So I'm curious, I just want to wrap this up here with a couple more questions for you. Is, in the next, say, 10, maybe even 20 years, where do you see all this going for you? What's life really going to look like for you? What do you see as the good life? Not nothing polished that you need to post on Instagram or Facebook, but like, really, what do you see you're evolving into that just brings you alive?
What I see is the experience and the wisdom I gleaned from the years that we've been in business and been married and just going through life, the initiations, the ups and the downs, and seeing all that come into the courses, the programs, and being able to find this combination of, yes, this is what I have inside of me. This is what I've learned. This is what I have to offer you. But then also being able to have this whole machine that puts it out into the world while I go, and my love is baking and cooking. Like, what when I told Derek I don't ever want to do private work again, I never wanted to take my apron off. And this one day I was just in the zone. I was making Dubai chocolate, I was making all this stuff, and I've got all these aprons I love. And I saw this thing come up, like I had this appointment come up. And I was like, oh, I don't want to take my apron off. So what I decided? I did my call with my apron on.
Nice.
And I was just like, this is the thing. So what I see is me being able the creating is cooking, and then also I'm painting with my sons where we paint rocks. We have all these art supplies right here on the shelf. I am loving creating, and not because I'm going to sell it or market it, but just for the joy of it, just for the fun of it, just because I am so focused and I feel so alive. And also, I'm aware my kids are 10 and 11, right? They're getting ready to turn 11 and 12. And
Mhm.
so this phase is about now looking at them and going, what do you all care about? What are you interested in?
Mhm.
How can I support who you are so that you get to be yourself in the world? And that is what I actually think all of this is doing, is having a business that can be run on, something more than my energy,
Mhm.
being able to support my children and being who they are, and me being able to create for joy.
Mm. And this is definitely rubbing off on your kids. Isn't your oldest an entrepreneur as well?
Yes, he is. He already has his first business. This kid, he's a firstborn, and he's a Capricorn, so it's already in there. But he's got his own scone business, and yeah, I heard the other day
Baking,
through
of
my
course.
dad. Yeah, that of course. He was at the grocery store with my dad, and one of his customers saw him and said, "Oh, Sam, I just love your scones." And a lady standing next to them goes, "Wait, you make scones? You sell scones?" And then the lady said, "What's your secret?" And he just, like, without hesitation, goes, "I use half and half." And I just was cracking up because this kid, he's so solid in himself, and he's just so proud of what he makes. And so, yeah,
I
it's
love
fun to
it.
see.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So are there any last words, Monique, that you want to share? This has been wonderful to connect with you and learn the behind the scenes and in depth about who you are. But is there any last words you have for the woman listening who maybe is trying to hold it all together, running business life and also feeling the heat of perimenopause.
Yes. What I want to say for every woman who's going through this is this, I've heard it described as an extreme sport. And I think that there's a lot of accuracy in that because it can be intense and it can stretch us and it can feel like it's pushing every edge and it's also very unknown. We don't know a lot of what we're navigating when we're navigating it. And so what I would say is this is that you're not you're not doing it wrong. You're not going crazy. You're not failing. You're not irrelevant. You are simply going through a process of becoming your most refined, wise self. And in our culture here in America, we often do not honor age and wisdom and elders and all of this. We praise and we worship youth. And there's nothing wrong with youth. It's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
But I want women to pause and be able to recognize in themselves that this season, it might not feel wonderful right now, but this is not the end. It's not the end. I am still going through it, but I can see sparks of it and I can see lights at the end of the tunnel and I can feel in myself like, oh, I'm not irrelevant and invaluable. I'm just changing my spot at the table. This is actually a graduation. And guess what? We get to be the ones who say it's that. We get to decide what the conversation is about this process and who we're becoming. We don't have to let a culture define it for us. And I just want you to remember it's not the end. It's not always pleasant. But if you will be with it, if some days it'll feel like you're wrestling with it, some days it'll feel like you're dancing with it, but just stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. Keep going because I read, Sarah, that this is the age where women have the highest suicide rates, where women really give up and they wonder like what do I have anymore? And there's a lot of grief involved.
Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like it's once you figure it out, it's all easy. Like you're saying, you have these ups and down days. But I think having come through the other side, I'm officially menopause. And as it does even out, as the fluctuations do even out, like I think this is the most amazing, powerful time ever that we're coming into. So thank you for saying that and sharing that wisdom. It's so important for women to hear that coming from someone who's accomplished so much, but also has been through so much to get there. So,
Thank you.
Monique, thank you. And where can people find you?
Mm, I'm mainly on Facebook, and the network like the rich world. And or I'm making the next dessert.
I'll have to stop over for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time.